The Suburban Nightmare, when fake HOA cops exposed a Nobel winner's secret. The quiet streets of Arcadia Grove, with their manicured lawns and white picket fences, embodied the American suburban dream, until a chilling Thursday morning shattered the illusion. What began as a typical HOA dispute over trivial violations, a forest green front door, non-compliant per the enforcers, daffodils clashing with the neighborhood's color scheme, even wind chimes deemed too loud, exploded into a high-stakes conspiracy targeting one unassuming retiree. The so-called HOA officers in their suspiciously generic uniforms and mirrored sunglasses weren't just power-tripping bureaucrats, they were mercenaries. And their victim, 68-year-old Lydia Brandt, wasn't just any neighbor. She was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist whose decades-old quantum encryption research had made her a target in a shadow war over national security. The confrontation played out like a scene from a thriller. The imposters, armed with laminated badges and a binder of fabricated bylaws, escalated from issuing ridiculous citations. "Your welcome mat is a quarter-inch over regulation," to handcuffing Lydia on her own porch. For older viewers, the scenario tapped into visceral fears: the vulnerability of retirement, the betrayal of trust in institutions, and the quiet dread of being targeted by sophisticated scams. The fake HOA tactic was deliberate, exploiting the banality of suburban governance to avoid suspicion. As Lydia later noted, "Who questions a clipboard and a uniform in a neighborhood like this?" But the story's real power lay in its twists. When local police arrived, the imposters doubled down, citing made-up HOA detainment statutes until a retired attorney neighbor, Professor Carmichael, exposed their documents as gibberish. The tension peaked as the lead imposter reached for his holster, only for federal agents to swarm the block, revealing Lydia's past. Her Nobel-winning work on quantum computing, once classified under Pentagon contracts, had resurfaced in the hands of a tech billionaire running a black market data ring. The HOA charade was a smokescreen to kidnap her and extract her knowledge. For older audiences, Lydia became an unexpected hero. Her intelligence and resilience defied stereotypes about aging, while her refusal to be bullied, "I am a private citizen in good standing," echoed the era's distrust of unchecked authority. The neighborhood's transformation, from gawking bystanders to a united front installing security cameras and patrol shifts, mirrored post-9/11 solidarity, a callback to when communities rallied against shared threats. Even the resolution carried depth. Lydia, though traumatized, joined a federal cyber task force, proving retirement doesn't end purpose. The tale's cultural cues, from the Chicago Tribune on the kitchen table to arguments over inches and Fahrenheit, grounded its absurdity in relatable Americana. Yet its warnings felt urgent, about data privacy, the weaponization of trust, and the quiet wars waged in our backyards. As the fake HOA van sped away, tires screeching, it left behind more than tire marks. It exposed how easily the American dream can be hijacked and how ordinary courage can reclaim it. In the end, Arcadia Grove's ordeal wasn't just about Lydia. It was a parable for anyone who's ever feared being too small to fight back, until life forces them to stand tall. And for viewers over 40, that message hit home. The greatest adventures don't retire when you do. The unlikely heroine, how a retired scientist outsmarted corporate espionage. In a world that often dismisses seniors as passive observers, the story of Lydia Brandt, a retired Stanford physicist and Nobel laureate, shatters stereotypes with the force of a quantum particle collision. When fake HOA officers stormed her peaceful Arcadia Grove neighborhood, they expected to intimidate a vulnerable elderly woman. Instead, they encountered a razor-sharp intellect honed over decades of groundbreaking research, proving that true brilliance never retires. This wasn't just a story about neighborhood drama. It was a masterclass in how experience trumps brute force and why society should never underestimate its senior members. The confrontation began with what appeared to be petty HOA harassment, absurd citations about Lydia's non-compliant forest green door and disruptive wind chimes. But those familiar with American suburbia's unspoken rules recognized the deeper significance. The violation wasn't about aesthetics, but about control. For older viewers who've spent years navigating HOA politics and bureaucratic power trips, Lydia's calm defiance resonated deeply. When the imposters demanded immediate fines, she didn't cower. She cited her perfect compliance record, demonstrating the quiet confidence that comes with age and accomplishment. The moment Lydia's Nobel Prize was revealed, the narrative shifted from suburban satire to something far more profound. Her pioneering work in quantum encryption, once instrumental in national defense, had made her a target for a tech billionaire's data theft ring. Here was a woman who had spent her career breaking barriers in male-dominated STEM fields, only to face a different kind of battle in retirement. The layers of irony were rich. The harmless little old lady held knowledge so powerful that shadowy operatives staged an elaborate ruse to steal it. For America's aging population, often marginalized in tech conversations, Lydia became a symbol of enduring relevance in our digital age. What made Lydia particularly compelling was her realistic portrayal. She wasn't some action movie superhero. She trembled when handcuffed, her voice shook with anger, and she admitted her fear about the past, following her into retirement. Yet when pressed, she outmaneuvered her captors with the tools she'd always possessed: logic, expertise, and moral clarity. Her showdown with the lead imposter, where she calmly exposed flaws in his fake legal claims, showcased how decades of academic rigor prepared her for this moment. "You have no right to seize anything," she declared, her words carrying the weight of someone who'd spent a lifetime defending scientific truth against exploitation. The story's resolution carried special poignancy for older viewers. Rather than retreating into fear, Lydia chose to consult for a federal cyber task force, transforming her ordeal into purpose. In doing so, she modeled active aging, a rebuke to stereotypes that paint retirees as passive or technologically inept. Her decision to protect national security, even after being targeted by it, spoke to the generational values many seniors cherish: duty, resilience, and quiet patriotism. For America's 40-plus demographic, Lydia's journey mirrored their own societal shifts, from being at the forefront of their fields to navigating invisibility in later life, only to prove their enduring value. When the neighborhood rallied around her, installing security systems and patrols, it wasn't just about safety, it was a recognition that wisdom deserves protection. The fake HOA badges and corporate espionage made headlines, but the real story was simpler. A brilliant woman reminding the world that some things, like curiosity and courage, don't expire with age. As the Department of Defense commendation glittered on Lydia's mantle alongside family photos, it sent a powerful message to viewers. The most extraordinary stories often unfold after the career ends. The kids move out, and life is supposed to get quiet. Except sometimes the quiet is just the calm before an adventure, one where decades of accumulated knowledge become the ultimate weapon. In an era obsessed with youth and disruption, Lydia Brandt's greatest disruption was proving that the sharpest minds often belong to those who've been thinking longest. The suburban battleground, when quantum secrets turned a quiet neighborhood into a cyber war zone. The tranquil streets of Arcadia Grove became an unlikely front in the invisible war of digital security when fake HOA enforcers attempted to kidnap retired physicist Lydia Brandt. What initially appeared as another case of neighborhood power abuse revealed itself as something far more sinister: a high-stakes corporate espionage operation targeting Lydia's Nobel Prize-winning quantum encryption research. This incident exposed how even America's most peaceful suburbs aren't immune to 21st century cyber threats, making it particularly relevant for older Americans who remember simpler technological times but now face complex digital dangers. The confrontation began with disturbingly familiar elements: aggressive HOA officers citing petty violations that any suburban resident might recognize. Their laminated badges and bureaucratic demeanor provided perfect camouflage, exploiting the trust Americans traditionally place in local authority figures. For viewers over 40, this tactic hit close to home, echoing real-life scams where criminals impersonate IRS agents or Medicare representatives to target seniors. The imposter's escalation to physical restraint, handcuffing a senior citizen over flowerbed violations, created visceral outrage while highlighting modern vulnerabilities. When investigators discovered the mercenaries' true motives, the story transformed into a cautionary tale about data security and retirement. Lydia's quantum research, once cutting-edge government science, had become a target for corporate thieves because its algorithms could potentially crack global financial systems and military networks. This revelation resonated deeply with older audiences increasingly concerned about digital privacy, identity theft, and how technology they don't fully understand impacts their safety. The neighborhood's shocked reaction mirrored many seniors' experiences of watching the world become more technologically complex than they anticipated. The community's response offered both drama and hope. Residents who initially hesitated to get involved ultimately formed a neighborhood watch, installing security cameras and organizing patrols. This grassroots mobilization demonstrated how traditional community values could combat modern threats. For older viewers who remember neighborhood watches from their youth, this was a powerful reminder that time-tested solutions still have value in the digital age. The intergenerational cooperation, with younger tech-savvy neighbors helping seniors understand the surveillance systems, modeled ideal community adaptation to new challenges. Lydia's personal journey provided the story's emotional core. Her decision to consult for a federal cyber task force in her retirement years became an inspiring example of lifelong contribution. This resonated with older Americans seeking meaningful engagement after their primary careers end. The Department of Defense's recognition of her work validated the idea that experience and wisdom remain valuable commodities, even in fields dominated by younger technologists. The story's villains, a tech billionaire and his mercenary team, represented growing societal concerns about corporate overreach and data privacy. Their elaborate plot to steal Lydia's knowledge mirrored real-world anxieties about how personal information becomes commodified. For seniors increasingly dependent on technology but wary of its risks, this narrative thread validated their concerns while offering the reassuring message that individuals can fight back. Ultimately, the Arcadia Grove incident served as both warning and inspiration. It revealed how suburban tranquility could be disrupted by global cyber conflicts, but also how traditional American values, community solidarity, respect for expertise, and civic responsibility provide the best defense. Lydia's triumph proved that retirement doesn't mean irrelevance in the digital age, and that sometimes the most powerful weapons against future threats are the knowledge and principles cultivated over a lifetime. For older viewers, this wasn't just entertainment. It was a validation of their experiences navigating a changing world, and proof that their generation still has crucial roles to play in America's technological future. The story's most enduring message may be that in the battle between progress and principles, wisdom and community can still prevail. The power of community, how a neighborhood's unity defeated a corporate conspiracy. The quiet streets of Arcadia Grove became the stage for an extraordinary display of community strength when fake HOA officers attempted to kidnap retired scientist Lydia Brandt. What began as a disturbing violation of suburban peace transformed into a powerful testament to what neighbors can accomplish when they stand together against corruption. This real-life drama resonated particularly with older Americans who remember when communities were tightly knit and neighbors looked out for one another, values that seem increasingly rare in today's disconnected world. The crisis unfolded with terrifying familiarity. The imposter's authoritarian tactics, citing absurd violations, threatening fines, and eventually resorting to physical force, mirrored the worst excesses of bureaucratic overreach that many seniors have experienced firsthand. For viewers who remember when HOAs were simply about maintaining property values rather than exercising unchecked power, the scene struck a nerve. When Lydia was handcuffed on her own porch over daffodils and wind chimes, it represented every senior's fear of being bullied by systems they no longer understand or control. Yet the story's true power emerged in the neighborhood's response. Initially divided, some neighbors recording on their phones, others whispering about staying out of it, the community gradually united in defense of one of their own. The transformation was gradual but profound. Skeptical onlookers became active participants, installing security cameras, organizing patrol schedules, and ultimately creating an impenetrable network of vigilance. For older viewers who recall when neighborhood watches were commonplace, this revival of community policing was both nostalgic and inspiring. Key figures emerged to lead the resistance. Professor Carmichael, the retired attorney, used his legal expertise to debunk the imposter's fake documents. Belinda, the observant neighbor walking her dog, became the first to spot the second wave of intruders. Even the local police officer, initially hesitant to challenge the apparent authority figures, ultimately stood with the community. This distribution of roles, where everyone contributed according to their abilities, modeled ideal civic engagement for retirees wondering how they can still make a difference. The technological aspects of their defense held special significance. While the younger neighbors handled the digital surveillance systems, older residents contributed institutional knowledge and observational skills honed over decades. Their coordinated efforts proved that combating modern threats doesn't require abandoning traditional values. It simply means applying them in new ways. The image of seniors and younger neighbors working side by side to protect their community offered a hopeful vision of intergenerational cooperation in an age of increasing social fragmentation. As the conspiracy unraveled, the neighborhood's victory became about more than just exposing fake HOA officers. It became a rejection of the isolation and powerlessness that too often characterize modern life, especially for seniors. When Lydia chose to stay in the neighborhood despite the danger, and when her neighbors doubled down on protecting her, they collectively affirmed that some things are worth fighting for, and that community bonds can be stronger than fear. In the aftermath, the real HOA's reforms symbolized a return to sensible, neighborly governance. The arrested tech billionaire's downfall served as satisfying comeuppance for corporate overreach. But the most enduring message was the quiet heroism of ordinary people doing extraordinary things together. For older viewers, the story validated their belief in community while challenging them to rebuild those connections in their own lives. Out for one another, values that seem increasingly rare in today's disconnected world. The crisis unfolded with terrifying familiarity. The imposter's authoritarian tactics, citing absurd violations, threatening fines, and eventually resorting to physical force, mirrored the worst excesses of bureaucratic overreach that many seniors have experienced firsthand. For viewers who remember when HOAs were simply about maintaining property values rather than exercising unchecked power, the scene struck a nerve. When Lydia was handcuffed on her own porch over daffodils and wind chimes, it represented every senior's fear of being bullied by systems they no longer understand or control. Yet the story's true power emerged in the neighborhood's response. Initially divided, some neighbors recording on their phones, others whispering about staying out of it, the community gradually united in defense of one of their own. The transformation was gradual but profound. Skeptical onlookers became active participants, installing security cameras, organizing patrol schedules, and ultimately creating an impenetrable network of vigilance. For older viewers who recall when neighborhood watches were commonplace, this revival of community policing was both nostalgic and inspiring. Key figures emerged to lead the resistance. Professor Carmichael, the retired attorney, used his legal expertise to debunk the imposter's fake documents. Belinda, the observant neighbor walking her dog, became the first to spot the second wave of intruders. Even the local police officer, initially hesitant to challenge the apparent authority figures, ultimately stood with the community. This distribution of roles, where everyone contributed according to their abilities, modeled ideal civic engagement for retirees wondering how they can still make a difference. The technological aspects of their defense held special significance. While the younger neighbors handled the digital surveillance systems, older residents contributed institutional knowledge and observational skills honed over decades. Their coordinated efforts proved that combating modern threats doesn't require abandoning traditional values. It simply means applying them in new ways. The image of seniors and younger neighbors working side by side to protect their community offered a hopeful vision of intergenerational cooperation in an age of increasing social fragmentation. As the conspiracy unraveled, the neighborhood's victory became about more than just exposing fake HOA officers. It became a rejection of the isolation and powerlessness that too often characterize modern life, especially for seniors. When Lydia chose to stay in the neighborhood despite the danger, And when her neighbors doubled down on protecting her, they collectively affirmed that some things are worth fighting for, and that community bonds can be stronger than fear. In the aftermath, the real HOA's reforms symbolized a return to sensible, neighborly governance. The arrested tech billionaire's downfall served as satisfying comeuppance for corporate overreach. But the most enduring message was the quiet heroism of ordinary people doing extraordinary things together. For older viewers, the story validated their belief in community while challenging them to rebuild those connections in their own lives. Ultimately, Arcadia Grove's ordeal demonstrated that the best defense against modern threats, whether corporate espionage or everyday scams targeting seniors, isn't high-tech security systems or government intervention, though both helped, but rather old-fashioned neighborliness adapted for contemporary challenges. In an era of increasing isolation, the story offered both a warning and an invitation. The world may be changing, but the power of community endures, if we're willing to cultivate it. Justice in Suburbia: How Ordinary Americans Triumphed Over Corporate Greed and Corruption. The quiet tree-lined streets of Arcadia Grove became an unlikely battleground for justice when a band of fake HOA officers attempted to kidnap retired physicist Lydia Brandt. What unfolded was more than just a neighborhood dispute. It became a powerful allegory for our times, showing how ordinary citizens can stand up to corruption and win. For older Americans who remember when right and wrong seemed more clearly defined, this real-life drama offered both catharsis and inspiration in an era of increasing corporate malfeasance and institutional distrust. The story's villains represented every modern anxiety about power and privilege. The tech billionaire who orchestrated the plot embodied the worst excesses of corporate greed, willing to hire mercenaries, falsify documents, and terrorize a senior citizen to steal intellectual property. His elaborate scheme to pose as HOA enforcers revealed a chilling sophistication in exploiting systems meant to protect communities. For viewers who have watched helplessly as corporations and wealthy elites seem to operate above the law, this villain's eventual downfall provided deeply satisfying justice. Yet the true power of the story lay in its heroes. Not superheroes or government agents, but ordinary neighbors who found extraordinary courage. The retired attorney who dissected the fake legal documents, the middle-aged woman walking her dog who noticed suspicious activity, the local beat cop who initially hesitated but ultimately did the right thing. These were relatable figures, their heroism emerging gradually through small acts of integrity rather than grand gestures. For older viewers who often feel overlooked in today's society, this validation of everyday experience and wisdom was particularly meaningful. The legal aftermath carried special significance. The billionaire's very public arrest, the HOA's reforms, and Lydia's consulting role with federal investigators created a complete arc of accountability rarely seen in real life. Unlike so many modern stories where the powerful escape consequences, this one delivered clear, unambiguous justice, a quality many older Americans find lacking in today's complex world. The message was clear: the system can still work when good people insist on it. Lydia's personal journey added profound depth to the justice narrative. Her decision to continue contributing her expertise, despite the trauma she endured, modeled how victims can transform into leaders. When the Department of Defense recognized her contributions, it wasn't just personal vindication. It was a statement about honoring lifetime achievement and respecting elder wisdom in a youth-obsessed culture. For older viewers, the story's resolution offered more than entertainment. It provided moral clarity in confusing times. The clean lines between right and wrong, the visible consequences for wrongdoing, and the triumph of community values over corporate power all harken back to an era when justice seemed more attainable. Yet the modern context, and with its cybercrime elements and contemporary suburban setting, kept the message relevant to today's challenges. Ultimately, Arcadia Grove's story succeeded because it married timeless themes with timely concerns. It acknowledged real fears about institutional corruption and corporate overreach while offering hope that justice is still possible. It validated the experiences and values of older Americans while engaging with contemporary issues. And most importantly, it reminded viewers that in the battle between greed and justice, ordinary people, even retirees in quiet suburbs, can still make all the difference when they choose to stand together. Life Lessons from Arcadia Grove, Wisdom for Golden Years. This extraordinary story teaches us that retirement isn't the end of our purpose, but a new chapter where wisdom becomes our greatest strength. Like Lydia, we may face unexpected challenges in later life, but our accumulated experience equips us to handle them with dignity and resilience. The neighborhood's unity reminds us that true security comes not from isolation, but from nurturing community bonds, checking on neighbors, sharing skills, and standing together against injustice. For seniors navigating an increasingly complex world, the story offers crucial guidance. Stay curious about technology while trusting your hard-earned judgment. Be cautious of scams, but don't withdraw from society. Most importantly, recognize that your lifetime of knowledge remains valuable. Whether mentoring younger generations, volunteering, or simply being the voice of reason in your community, you still have vital contributions to make. The quiet heroism of Arcadia Grove proves that ordinary people create extraordinary change when they act with courage and compassion. In retirement as in youth, a life well lived means continuing to grow, connect, and make a difference. One small act of integrity at a time.